with all of you. This seminar is really a great place for me. I've had 3 different jobs in the past year, and I feel like this seminar is sort of the center of all of them, because right now I'm looking at effective regulatory strategies in my job at the Kennedy School, but I'm also working with Chris Basso with the Nanotechnology and Society Research Group, identifying ways to manage the risks from emerging technologies. And before that, at the Product Stewardship Institute, trying to get companies to do the right thing, to take responsibility for their products from cradle to grave. So the legislation we're going to talk about today, the strategies we're going to talk about today, are an attempt to kind of do all of these things at once to effectively and efficiently develop regulatory strategies that can reduce the risk of novel and emerging technologies in the best way possible, and put responsibility for managing these risks on the shoulders of those best able to manage them. So the questions before us today are several. One is a question of, should government intervene in the marketplace to influence chemicals policy? I think we probably would all agree that the answer to that question is yes. The government at both the federal and state levels have a long history of intervening to, for example, ban lead from gasoline. But the question I think we really want to focus on here is how to do that. What are the best strategies? Are banning chemicals, as in the example I just gave, is that the best approach? Or should government here in Massachusetts follow a strategy that was established more than 2 decades ago with the Toxic Use Reduction Act, which identifies chemicals of concern and requires companies that use those chemicals to go through a detailed planning process where not only they disclose their use of these chemicals, what chemicals they're using, how they use them, how much, but also develop plans for reducing those chemicals over time. So is that planning-based approach, which doesn't actually require companies to stop using chemicals, would that approach be useful? And I think a third question is, at what level should policy be made? We're seeing today so much activity in this area in Europe with the European Commission and the law that's been in place there since 1987 called REACH, stands for the Registration, Evaluation, Authorization, and Restriction of Chemical Substances, which recently came out with a list of 6 substances, high priority chemicals that would be banned. So we have international arena, we have federal legislation. There's been talk recently of reauthorizing or modernizing the Toxic Substances Control Act. But where we really see a lot of activity these days is at the state level. So I think our speakers are going to get into that. There's, as I see it, pros and cons with state initiatives to address chemicals in products. But that certainly is where the action is now. So we have 2 wonderful speakers. Joel Tickner to my immediate right, we've asked him to go first, followed by Robert Rio. Joel is an associate professor at UMass Lowell in the Department of Community Health and Sustainability, where he is also the director of the Lowell Center for Sustainable Production, and he's an expert in toxic risk reduction, risk assessment, pollution prevention. He has written the book, or I should say books, on the precautionary principle and its application to chemicals policy, and advised governments, the international, national, and state level on policy in this area. He recently won the University of Massachusetts Award from the President for Public Service. So Joel's going to go first, and I'll introduce Bob too. Robert Rio, or Bob, is the Senior Vice President for Government Affairs at Associated Industries of Massachusetts, where he's worked for 13 years. And if you don't know AIM, it is the major industry advocacy group in the state. It has 7,000 members, and I understand 1 out of every 5 Massachusetts workers works in a company that's a member of AIM. Bob's area of expertise is environmental policy and health and safety policy, and he works both on legislation and regulation, is a frequent advisor to the Massachusetts DEP and US EPA and other agencies. We're proud to claim him as an alum, Northeastern, in environmental engineering. He also has a law degree. So ask them both to talk for about 20 minutes, and then we'll have a discussion.
Great.